What's going on, everybody? Today we're going to be talking about how to do a full sport analysis, also known as a needs analysis in sport. So the first thing we have to do is answer the question of what is a needs analysis or a sport analysis? And to answer that question, the easiest way is to ask a question. And what I mean by that is, in order to understand the needs of a sport, we have to understand what the sport demands and how do we build the athlete to tolerate and express those needs of whatever sport they're practicing or involved in. One thing we need to understand is that programming for a sport should be somewhat constrained to the demands of the sport itself, or what's exactly required of an athlete in any sport or practice or discipline or field or whatever the case. And this is when we started to get into the concept of what really is sport specific or sport specificity, and this term in general that's become such a marketing term or ploy in especially social media. When we think about sport specific, you think of who's the newest influencer that's posting a video that looks very strange or almost exactly like the sport, and you know what I mean. It's important to understand that that's not what sport specific is. In fact, sport specific doesn't necessarily exist, but we can change the concept, the philosophy of what the terms are telling us to be useful in some sense. So when we think about sport, we think about different movement patterns, different energy system contributions, different physiological demands, different physical demands, anthropometric requirements, work to rest ratios, common limitations, injury risk, common injuries in the sport. And then things as simple as the tactical structure, even the rules of the game that affect training. And so we go back to the one question of what does the sport demand of the athlete, and how do we build the athlete to tolerate and express the demands of the sport efficiently and effectively? And to do this, there's a number of different resources that we can utilize to be able to answer that question. Things as simple as published literature, match data, things that we collect during a game, like GPS data or IMU data, video analysis, rules of the sport, competition structure, season structures, objective measurements, how do you win the game, how do you lose the game. And so we can see that there's even some tactical components to this that would affect rest intervals, or how an athlete should warm up for the sport or prepare themselves. All these kinds of things that sometimes we don't necessarily think about. And so the first thing we'll start with in this kind of understanding of how to create a sport analysis is number one, which is the type of sport and the interactions within the sport. So here what we can do is we can start to classify the sport. Is it an open versus closed skill sport? Is it a team or individual sport? Is it a contact or non-contact sport? Is it a continuous sport or is it an intermittent sport? Is it a combat sport? Is it an invasion sport? Is it a field sport? Is it a court sport? All these things at the end of the day are going to determine a few number of things. Our decision-making load. How many people we need to communicate when we try to make a decision in the weight room or on the field. The chaos level of the sport. The different force exposures and what's expected of the athlete or individual in terms of contacts or all these kinds of things. The tactical complexity of the sport. All these things are going to shape the training density and the variability in how we decide or go about the philosophy of our programming for this athlete in front of us. The second thing that we get into, or the second topic of the sport analysis, is the rules of the game that affect training. And so the one thing here that we really need to understand is that the rules of the sport are going to dictate the physiological demands of the sport. We got to ask ourselves questions like, how long is the match? How many periods are there? What do the substitution rules look like? How many substitutions do they get? Is there a shot clock? Are there weight classes? Is this a weight division sport? What's the field or court size? What's the ring size? Are there any positional restrictions? What's the scoring structure? How do you win? All these rules are going to dictate the total match duration, different windows where we want to express peak efforts and make sure the athlete is prepared to express those efforts, our tactical pacing of the sport, different positional energy costs. And so just understanding that the rules of the sport are going to really dictate almost the conditioning, the physiological demands of the sport, and how we prepare our athletes in terms of work to rest ratios, how they train in the weight room or on the field. Again, especially for conditioning. The third topic we get into in the needs analysis is what's called the time motion analysis. This is where we start to quantify movement. And so we can start to break the movement into different categories. How long is the athlete standing? How long is the athlete walking? How long is the athlete jogging? How long is the athlete sprinting? Are there collisions? Are there isometric engagements? What's the technical execution look like? What do those thresholds for each of those categories look like in the first place? Is it an individual specific thing? Is it a team specific thing? Is it a means specific based on positional thing? Is it based on the level of the sport? Is it high school, college, professional, national level? And so this is where we can really start to get into the literature or the video analysis of the sport itself, right? We can start to quantify things such as total distance covered, our high speed distance accumulated, what the thresholds for our high speed distance looks like, the sprint frequency, how often an athlete is standing, how often an athlete is jogging, how often the athlete is sprinting. What is the mean sprint duration? What is the mean standing duration? What does that work to rest ratio look like? We can start to get into different acceleration counts. We can start to get into different braking counts. How hard do these athletes accelerate? How hard do they brake? What do those demands look like, and how do we differentiate them throughout the course of a match or the game? Are there position specific differences? And so this section answers, how often do high intensity bouts occur? How long do they last? How much recovery exists within those bouts? And are these efforts repeatable? Are they clustered? Are they one and done situations? What does that look like? And so the next topic we get into is the sport's physical and physiological demands. This is where we can really start to identify and quantify our different energy system contributions. Is it a phosphagen-based sport? Is it a glycolytic-based sport? Is it an aerobic-based sport? And to quantify this, we can use a number of different pieces of data. We can use heart rate data accumulated during the match or the game or the bout. We can use VO2 max data or different norms or averages within the population or demographic or different positions within the sport. We can do things as complicated as blood lactate research, like what are these individuals' average blood lactate thresholds or anaerobic thresholds. This is where we can really start to deep dive into like work to rest ratios and see the physiological constraints that these athletes are limited by. Right? Outside of the physiological demands, we can also start to get into the physical demands. What are the strength demands? Like what are average peak force outputs? What does the rate of force development look like in these athletes? Is it a reactive based sport? Like do we need to have a reactive strength component to our training? How much plyometric exposures do we need? Should we or should we not incorporate isometrics within our training? Is that a demand of the sport? Is that required? We can also start to get into our power demands of the sport. Is this a primarily vertical power based sport? Is it a horizontal power based sport? Is it an upper body or lower body based discipline? Should we emphasize unilateral versus bilateral? What does that difference look like? And then also, what do the speed demands look like? Is this a primarily sprinting based sport? Should we have these athletes exposed to top speed? Most athletes should be, and in fact all athletes should be, but for what reasons? And to what extent? What does the change of direction frequency look like? How do we have to take that into account? The next topic we get into is the athlete's physical and anthropometric characteristics. And we can really start to differentiate the levels of the sport here because we have an understanding of what kind of athlete or what kind of individual excels at different positions or even the sport itself. So we can start to see like high school versus college versus pro versus national and the differences between those at an anthropometric or characteristical quality. This is where we start to look at things like height, body mass, body fat percentage, lean mass, limb length, position specific differences, and that we have a certain understanding and distinction that some of these qualities are trainable and some of these are not. And so this kind of gives us an inclination or an understanding. What kind of athletes do we want to recruit for what specific positions? What exactly are we monitoring? The sixth topic we get into is probably the most important one and really deems this a sport-specific analysis. And that is what's called key performance indicators or KPIs. Key performance indicators are the qualities or characteristics that are associated with winning. It's also important to understand that this isn't necessarily just describing random fitness tests. These have to be quantifiable measures that are either physical, physiological, or tactical. And so some different physical and physiological qualities would be power outputs, force outputs, speed outputs, acceleration, deceleration, counter movement jump heights, repeat sprint ability, VO2 max, anaerobic thresholds, lactate thresholds. And then we also get into the technical or tactical qualities of the sport. For example, say a soccer player, how many shots on goal do they make? Other tactical qualities would be like passing accuracy. So again, things that are more sport oriented and that as a strength or performance coach we are not necessarily responsible for, because anything that we do is more so for the physical or physiological qualities, right? We want to increase the capacity for this athlete to be more capable of performing more efficiently at their sport. We're not necessarily responsible for, hey, this is how you shoot the ball better. No, I can get you faster so that maybe you can win some bouts against other guys. Those are two different topics completely. And so the seventh topic we get into is, based on the key performance indicators, what are some valuable tests or assessments that we can do in order to measure those qualities? And so we have to kind of reverse engineer from what our KPIs actually are. The most important thing with key performance indicators is that they must be testable. We cannot choose a key performance indicator that we cannot physically or physiologically quantify or assess, because how do we improve it if we don't know how to measure it? And so if we have power as a key performance indicator, which most sports should and do, how do we quantify power? If speed is an important quality or key performance indicator in a sport, how do we quantify speed? If strength is a key performance indicator in a sport, how do we quantify strength? And so we have to think about different tests and assessments that we're able to do. Is it a counter movement jump? Is it a max bench press? Is it a 3-rep max squat? Is it a VO2 max test? Is it a 30-meter fly? Is it a 20-meter fly? Is it a 60-meter sprint? Is it a 100-meter sprint? What question are you trying to answer, and what KPI are you trying to assess, and how do you assess that metric? And the last thing we need to understand with the tests and assessments is that we don't want to just collect data to collect data. It's not just like a numbers for numbers situation. We have to try and answer the question of, how is this number helping us make more informed decisions about our programming or the athlete in front of us? The eighth topic we get into is common limitations. Now, this is where we get to start to look into common sites of injury. What are the different injury rates? What are the mechanisms of injury? What are the overuse patterns of the sport? Are there any growth-related risks in terms of a youth athlete? Is there a positional injury bias that's pretty consistent, right? For example, like a wide receiver that gets more hamstring strains than a O-lineman sometimes. What this is trying to aim to do is guide our prehab emphasis. It's also trying to guide our tissue capacity development, our volume tolerance, our periodization strategies. Understanding like, what is it that we need to be prioritizing within our warm-ups, within our cooldowns, within the training itself, within our accessories, within any sort of extra work or even primary work that we do to help these athletes reduce the risk of getting injured. And then the ninth topic in our sport analysis is kind of the conclusion section. This is where we get the opportunity to connect everything together that we've worked on this entire time. The conclusion should somewhat answer, what is the priority? What needs to be maintained? What needs to be monitored? And many other different questions that kind of tie in everything together to give us a good understanding of how do we need to program for the sport, for the athlete, for the position, or for whatever kind of topic we're trying to understand better. The goal of the sport analysis is to be able to make programming so obvious it is literally right in front of you on a piece of paper. Every question that you have in terms of what do I need to program should be right in front of you. We really need to understand the overarching principle of all this, in that what sport specific actually is and what it means. It's not copying a movement from the sport in the gym. Our goal as strength conditioning coaches or performance coaches or speed coaches is to develop the physical qualities to make an athlete more capable of being a better athlete in their sport, position, field, discipline, whatever the case may be. We are responsible for the physical and physiological qualities that we can increase the capacity of to make this athlete more capable of eliciting the qualities that they need to perform the sport better. I hope this answers some questions, and I do want to see what you guys can come up with. So like, what is your sport? And try and see if you can utilize some of these topics to be able to make a sport analysis for your sport. So put some stuff down on the comments and let's see what you got. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully this helps and provides some value to you as a coach or anybody watching this in whatever capacity. If you want more content like this, like, subscribe, tell me what you want. Comments are down below, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.